Check, check. Check, check, check.
This really works.
Rah, how's it going?
Good morning.
How you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right, man. Can't complain.
That's what I love to hear. Yeah, we're here in the classroom. You can see me. You can probably see yourself behind you too. And then we've got all of our students in here, and we got some other people joining on team. So we got a full house today.
Hi, kids. Do you like violence?
They all giggled. You can't see them, but they're laughing. So, Rod, just like normal, I'm gonna introduce you, and then I've got Jaden right here who's going to help interview you today. And well, yeah, let's get right into it. If you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right, let's get you loud. Okay. All right. So y'all know that in this class we have nothing but illustrious guests, and today hip hop royalty is visiting our classroom. Rah Digga, hailing from New Jersey, is one of the best MCs to ever touch the mic. She began her career collaborating with the group Twice the Flavor before joining the Outsidaz crew, which led to a feature on the Fugees' iconic track Cowboys off their 1994 album, The Score. After connecting with Busta Rhymes via Q-Tip of A Tribe Called Quest, Rah Digga joined Busta's Flipmode Squad and released her critically acclaimed debut album, Dirty Harriet, in 2000. She has been nominated for a bunch of awards, including the BET Awards Best Female Hip Hop Artist, Best Collaboration and Video of the Year, and she won an award for Best Collaboration on Busta's Touch It remix in 2006. And she's pivoted since then, moving into different spaces, releasing her own music on Bandcamp and SoundCloud, as well as doing an array of features in the 2010s. But her impact is much larger than her already monumental music career. She's engaged with community activism across the space of Newark. She's taught hip-hop masterclasses. She started the Lyrics Matter Foundation to teach hip-hop's foundational emceeing skills to students from 16 to 24. She's hosted a podcast with Lord Jamara, Brand Nubian, and she's even had an acting career, acting in the sci-fi hit 13 Ghosts, the Hip-Hopera Carmen alongside Beyonce, and most recently a film called Stars. In addition to all of this, she was also awarded the key to the city of Newark in 2000. So please, can we give a warm welcome to Dirty Harriet, aka the MC who won't let you diss her sisters, Rah Digga.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so let's get Jaden, you're right here. All right, so why don't you go ahead and I'll mess with this to make sure everybody can see it properly. But Jaden, if you want to go ahead and jump into it, let's get into it.
All right, so the first question I have for you is, you went from studying electrical engineering to becoming one of the most respected MC voices in hip hop, and now you work with kids. I just want to know what sparked the transition and how it correlate with your music career.
I'm sorry, it cut out a little bit, but you're asking what prompted the transition from music to working with children? Did I hear you correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, well, that's easy. I mean, for as long as I've been making music, I've always felt like the goal of my artistry was to empower other female artists like myself that come from the same spaces. And I've always been a big proponent of education in hip hop. Like part of my motivation when I was writing rhymes and stuff, and for the record, 2025, I'm still kicking butts with the features. But I was always like, a goal of mine whenever I was writing rhymes was always to add some element of education or add some element of teaching to it. So I would use words and I would kind of make it a thing to build the punchline around giving people the context clues to interpret my punchlines or introduce them to new vocabulary. So that was one of the things, that was one of the missions every time I put pen to pad. So it's not too far removed that I would now be in a position to teach the kids, because Dirty Harriet, the moniker, part of the definition of that was to lead the females, if you will, from the underground to the main space, and show girls from underserved communities that, hey, nothing, no goal is unattainable. Whatever your hopes and dreams and aspirations are, if you just stay persistent, you can do it this way. So now, fast forward to 2025, I've actually put together a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math curriculum through hip hop, and I'm using hip hop as the vessel to make education and make learning more fun for students, and just approach all of those subjects with, I guess, a hip hop twist, to make it more fun, deviate from the traditional ways of learning, since we know it's easy for students to memorize the words to their favorite records, but they may not be able to retain what they just learned in class at a lecture. So what I do is I infuse the hip hop to make learning more fun, and just using the God-given talent to spread that message and spread that love to uplift others.
I love that. I love that. My second question was, what is something that you would have done differently looking back at being handpicked by Q-Tip to join Flipmode Squad? And what did you learn from being a part of that group?
So I don't deal in regrets. I take everything as a learning experience. There aren't really too many things that I would have done different. Maybe I would have stayed with my first label a little longer and experienced actually dropping that second album with them, as opposed to transitioning to different labels to see if someone else could do it better. I think maybe I would have given my original label, Electro Records, more, more of a more of an opportunity to spin the block, if you will, on that second album. But I definitely know that everything I've done is has made me what I am today. Without some of those stumbles, without some of those hurdles, I feel like I wouldn't have been prepared to deal with real life adulting, because there's growing up hip hop, and then there's real life adulting. So I've been in hip hop my whole life since I was a child, but I also know that uh, there is a parallel universe, if you will, that's always in motion, and that is your real life. Balancing personal with professional. So a lot of the tools that I did acquire through hip hop has helped mold me into the real life Rashia Fisher, the wife, the mother, the human. So I take all of it as a learning experience, and being that all of that experience has led me and put me in position now to be able to pay it forward and do for others. I couldn't think of changing any of that.
Absolutely. Do you feel like your childhood also had a big, I want to say, like, inspiration, or this foundation of your childhood? Did that have a lot to do with your career as well?
Oh, for sure. So growing up, my parents listened to music around the clock. Like mo- mo- most of my fondest memories growing up were my parents waking up in the morning, throwing vinyl on, and just letting it rip every day, all day long. And that's pretty much how I learned how to work a record player, a turntable, because the record would play all the way to the end, and mom and dad would be busy somewhere. Hey, she, turn that record over, put such and such on. So that was my first experience with like actually handling vinyl, and I noticed that there were times when, even when my parents wouldn't suggest putting music on, or even if they're not at home, now I'm remembering records that I like, okay, I remember liking this one, I remember liking that one. So now I find myself playing the music over and over again. Now, mind you, I'm still a child. I'm elementary school child. And it wasn't until later on in life, when hip hop started making its presence known, that I actually started recognizing those samples. Like, hey, I know that record, the record that he's rapping on. My mom used to listen to that record. My dad had me playing that record over and over again. So that definitely uh, made me hone in to hip hop, if you will, because it was a familiar sound. It was something that was constantly bringing me back to my childhood, and remembering those records that my parents used to play over and over again.
That's great. I also saw that you were 8 months pregnant while performing at the Lyricist Lounge Showcase, and overall proving your spot in the game/music industry. What was running through your mind during that time? Did it make you feel motivated? Did you feel pressured by the game? Did you feel like you were the one to be picked out because you were pregnant, and that kind of would be a standpoint? How did that situation make you feel?
What and Rah, in addition to that, could you also maybe explain what the Lyricist Lounge is for students who might not understand?
Okay, so Lyricist Lounge was a movement started by two guys, one named Danny, one named Anthony, and they were the I would if I had to compare it to something, I would say Lyricist Lounge was the Mickey Mouse Club of the, and y'all, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Mickey Mouse Club, but the Mickey Mouse Club was like Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake. It was pretty much a, a hub of a particular type of artist. So Lyricist Lounge served as the, like, we are the real MCs. Most Def, Talib Kweli, Pharoah Monch, Common Sense, Bahamadia, Rah Digga, Shabam Sadiq. So there was a few of us, even a young 13, 14-year-old Foxy Brown. Like there was no artist who did not perform at the Lyricist Lounge at some point. That was almost like a test. that was like an MC Apollo. Like if you couldn't make it, if you couldn't survive a Lyricist Lounge show, just, I don't know, go look for a job or something, do something else. MCing is not for you. We were the antithesis of what was emerging at that time as what we call the shiny suit era. So we were kind of like the answer to all the drug dealer, flossy, flashy, bling bling rap. We were the, no, we don't deal. It's not about how much money you got and how you dress. It's about your rap skills. We're real hip hop. So that was the Lyricist Lounge camp, and I come from that. And one of these particular showcases I headlined, I was 8 months pregnant, and for me, being pregnant was more of a motivation. Like I was popping up at venues and performing and popping up at studio sessions and recording. I was more motivated than ever. Like I was never intimidated or scared to hide the fact that I was pregnant. I felt like I have to have a record deal before I have this baby. So if anything, it inspired me more to, to push myself even further. Like no matter how tired I was, the headliner doesn't go until 3 a.m. I'm an 8-month pregnant woman. Well, guess what? If I want this crowd being, hosted by Q-Tip and Carmen, if I want this crowd to see how good I rhyme, I got to push through at 8 months pregnant. And that's what I was doing. And that ultimately, that was the thing that got Q-Tip's attention. Like, yo, this girl's work ethic is something else. The fact that she's doing all of this at 8 months pregnant, I think that was a signal to him to sign me. Like, okay, imagine what she can do once she has the baby. And sure enough, that was the start of Rah Digga, the professional rapper, as opposed to the walking around in the hood and having ciphers and battles and things like that. That was the start of my career as a professional rapper.
Okay, and how would you say you dealt with your motherhood and your career? How was the balance for you growing up and getting into the game?
I was fortunate. I had a very good support system. My child's father, who was also an artist at the time, we were able to balance both our professional careers, and my parents, my mom and dad, were always available to my mom. My mom worked days, my dad worked nights, so we just all kind of put it together and had a system in place to juggle, to help me juggle with not having to rely on going to hire a babysitter or going to hire a nanny. Like I was always leery of hiring strangers to take care of my kid. I mean, it's, if you're fortunate enough to have people in the family, responsible people, because don't mean, family isn't always the most responsible either. But I grew up in a loving environment. Parents married almost 50 years, so, well, past 50 years now. My dad's passed away, but up until the very end, he was always there and available. And I had that, fortunately for me, I had that support system. Not so many people have that support system. But if you do have that support system, and I back in my day, I hate to sound like that guy, we firmly believed in the village raising children. So even if my parents weren't there, there was aunties, there was cousins, there was Miss Dolores downstairs, the Girl Scout leader, like everyone contributed in raising each other's children. So I could go on tour, I could go to radio stations, I could go do all the things that I needed to do, and just take comfort in knowing that my child was always going to be taken care of.
I love to hear that. I also read up how you have always given back to your community. You founded the Feed Me Foundation in 2009 to help feed Newark's homeless, to launching the Lyrics Matter Foundation in 2015 to teach young adults music and business skills. What drives you to keep pouring into the next generation, and what impact or message do you hope to leave behind to remember your legacy?
Well, we need the next generation to take care of us. I don't want to be an old lady and we just don't have doctors and nurses and lawyers and just persons of the world to take care of us. I think that is something that a lot of artists don't really think about. When it's your moment, it's your moment. You're just thinking about, let me get as much money as I can, let me get as much shine as I can while it's my moment. But in that moment, you also have to remember that, hey, if my voice is the loudest right now, what is the message that I want people to leave with and stick with and remember me by? And I just always want to be known as the artist who gave back, because you hear so many people talk about artists reaching their pinnacle and not looking back, and abandoning their communities, and some with good cause, because we do know that sometimes the hood is not the best place for artists to come back to. But I believe if you lead with love, you will receive the energy that you give out. I've always been big on karma. I've always been big on, let me make sure that I'm always nice to people, because you never know when you're going to need these people. Let me help mold the minds of the people that come after me, because I may have to rely on one of these people to take care of me later. And if everyone operated like that, the world would be so much better. And you also have to know that you may not always get it back from the places you pour into. I may pour into something over here and I may not see immediate results over here, but you know what? Somebody over here was listening, and that's how I get it back. So I just always operate on the premise of, you get back the energy you put out. So as long as I'm putting out positive energy and positive messages, it might not always sound positive when you're listening to the music, but the overall person, the man, the woman behind the mask is someone that you can relate to. And I just always want to be that for the next generation. It's important. I wish more artists did it. I wish artists like Future, who rap about Molly Percocets all the time, I wish he would do a class like this and explain the dangers of drugs. Because you got to know, when you have a platform like ours, you have to know that you are influencing and ultimately molding the minds of other people. So you may be you may have a particular messaging to sell records or to satisfy the record labels, but at the end of the day, what is the human message behind that? And I think it's important that artists balance that. I think we would see a huge difference in a lot of the thoughts and actions of some of our young folks today.
Absolutely. I also did a research on one of the podcasts that you did with Math Hoffa, and I heard you mention something about you screaming out back in the day, I write my own lyrics. Why was that so important to you?
it was important to me because there was a, there at some point when I felt like hip hop started becoming less about the messaging and more about the imagery and all of these other, and the fashion, and what I consider to be these non-factors when creating music. I That was almost like my counter punch. Okay, this person has got this person has a Versace and Gucci from head to toe. I don't have that, but guess what? I write my own rhymes. And there started to be this narrative that the women weren't writing their own rhymes. Like, it started, ghostwriting has always been a taboo thing. I mean, now no one cares, but once upon a time, it was really, really taboo to have a ghostwriter. It was almost like, as soon as it was revealed that somebody wrote your rhymes, you're almost counted out. So me constantly yelling, I write my own rhymes. That was my floss. That was my flex.
Absolutely. So in class, we are actually learning about feminism and sexism and how that can correlate to how women are, or Black women specifically, are targeted in the industry. I realized that you also talked about in the podcast how back in the day you would have ops, or ops are quote unquote competition back in the day. And you mentioned how Little Kim was someone that you used to feel like you had to, or was one of your competitors because of the way that she dressed, and that was not you. Is that something that you feel like the game has made or correlated around sexism to make women feel like they have to show off their bodies to be able to be in the music industry? And how does that impact your life, making you feel like you have to stand out other than the society stereotype?
So for eternity, the music industry has been pitting women against each other. And it's interesting because in the case of Little Kim, she turned out to be one of my closest friends in the business. But at the time, there was, there was kind of like this silent thing going on where it's like, oh well, you have to, you're gonna have to compete with that. Like, how you gonna compete with that? This one, she's got the squat picture pose. She had started dominating the the conversation as far as female emceeing went. So like I said, my counter, and it was rumored that Biggie Smalls was writing her rhymes. So whether it was true or not, uh, I write my own rhymes as a counter to that. Well, this is, if fashion and, being a sex kitten makes her special, this is what makes me special. So I felt like whenever I used to do press and interviews, one of the first questions that would be asked of me is, how do you feel about the female rappers that sell sex? And then by this time, Foxy had came to, and my retort to that would be, well, do they write their own rhymes? Because I do. And that would be kind of like my to that question. And I felt like if she did an interview, then they would say, hey, well, Rah Digga says she write her own rhymes. How do you feel about that? Or so I felt like with, like you see today, I guess the equivalent of that today would be the rappers that go on Vlad. You'll have one rapper go on Vlad, and Vlad is asking him questions about, oh, well, I had such and such up here, and he said this about you. And then that person responds, and then that response becomes a headline. And then whoever that vitriol is directed to, now you got that person up on the interview. Well, and I asked such and such in the interview what they, how they felt about this, and they had this to say about you. So kind of like the same thing going on, but it was I would say it wasn't the internet wasn't so big back then. There was no internet. So everything that we were doing were magazine articles and live radio interviews. So you would hear a lot of this stuff in real time, as opposed to, did you catch one of a million podcasts? And oh, I ain't see such and such said that. Like nowadays there's so many podcasts and so much content out there that you might miss some things. But back then, whenever a rapper said something, you wasn't missing it. And even with the recording process, once you recorded something, it would take about 2 months for a cassette or some vinyl to get pressed. But you could have made up with that person in that time. But guess what? A month later, now your album drops. You and this person could be friends, but you put it on wax 2 months ago. So now it's out and you have to deal with that recourse. So I felt like the media played a huge part in the, I guess, in the back and forth of that. But once we actually sat down as women, it wasn't until I met her and just had a real conversation with her that I realized, that we both realized, you know what? We are one in the same. It's not really you against me. It's us against the world. And if I gotta, and if I gotta even be more frank, it's us against the men. It's like we are these token chicks in a clique, and we all have to do what we have to do to stand out in our respective cliques. But once we all got to really, know each other, it was like, hey, we're all fighting the same fight. We're just trying to survive in our male-dominated crews, in this male-dominated field. And really, we're competing with the men. It's not us competing with each other. And that's why it was so important for us to collaborate. And anytime we could get together and make music together, you get records like Ladies Night, because we knew that ultimately that was the important thing to keep, for the survival of the women in this field.
Absolutely. My last question would probably be, looking at the females rappers today, how do you see the distinct difference between the female rappers back then and the female rappers today?
Well, one of the things I got to give the ladies credit for today, thank God they don't have to deal with this anymore. They don't have to rely on the male cosign to be dominant anymore. Like, the females are running the game right now. And we saw so many women in our era, as talented as they were, and as as dope as they were, a lot of them kind of fell by the wayside because they weren't attached to any male crew. It's like Rah Digga had Busta Rhymes, Lil Kim had Junior Mafia, Remy Ma had Terror Squad, Eve had Rough Riders. It was really the crew that was the name, and then you had the female that was assigned to the respective crew. And and the women don't have to do that today. Now, what I think the women are at a disadvantage today is, to me, there isn't enough variety being highlighted. It's like there's one prototype of woman, and we just kind of keep seeing that same prototype getting cloned over and over and over again. And these are the ones getting pushed to the forefront. And then you go on Spotify, or you go on the internet somewhere, and then you just see a whole slew of dope females, a variety of females, and you ask yourself, well, why isn't that person getting played on the radio? Like, why am I hearing this thing over and over again? Like, we know who this person is. It's like, You know, I mean, I can go back as far as, you know, whether it be Rapsody or Doechii or hell, even Azalea Banks. It's like, we know these women are dope. We know they are talented. Why don't we hear them on the radio like we hear Sexy Red? And when you know, when you understand that the music business is just that, music business, you're talking about a corporation of people that don't care about hip hop culture, that don't care about the messaging. They are gravitating to what they think we like, you know, what they think we like, and they are going to program that prototype over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, as time goes on, it's just going to get more and more ratchet, because now once everybody gets familiar and used to this thing, it's like, okay, what is the next thing we can do to take it over the top? And it's, you know, it's just going to spiral more and more in one direction. And that's why I applaud, you know, the schools that are teaching hip hop and you know, hip hop in the academia space is so profound now, because it exposes students to the, you know, just a whole nother world outside of what you're hearing on the radio and, you know, what you're seeing on TV. So I think for the women who dare to venture into this field, just have faith in you know, have faith in yourself and in your own originality. I would like to see more originality.
Absolutely.
That
Yes.
your last question?
Yes.
So before we get to Q&A, so for those of you who have questions, we're about to get to that point, and so, you know, start getting it ready. But Rah, I wanted to ask one more question, because some of the students might not know, you know, you talked about your STEAM initiatives in with your educational work, and some of the students might not know that, you know, you yourself have a passion for STEM, and that you had an opportunity to go to MIT. And the reason I'm asking about this is because a lot of the students here are at junctures where they're going to have to make decisions about, you know, what are they going to do? How are they going to decide what to pursue and what not to? And you chose not to pursue a degree at MIT and instead to, you know, pour into your artistry. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and why you made it?
So for as long as I've been on this earth, I've been just a math and science girl. Like I literally would, all the AP classes, AP physics, AP calculus. Like I was acing physics exams without, I could just do formulas without even a calculator. And I always, I was always fascinated by the shuttle launches. So I grew up, you know, how when what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an astronaut. I always wanted to go into space, right? And when I was when I think I want to say I might have been 10 years old when the Challenger space shuttle exploded. That immediately scared me. I said, okay. And on that note, I don't want to go to space anymore. But what I will do is I will be the person that builds the rockets to make sure that something like that never happens again. So I went on to study electrical engineering, and, you know, got damn near perfect score in the math portion of at the time when we took the SATs, it wasn't 3 parts, it was only 2 parts, the reading and the math, 800. I scored like top 5% time. I got like third out of 1600. I got like 1340 or 14. That my mind's hazy, but, you know, Ace knocked that math out the park. And was actually granted a full scholarship to MIT. Now, I was also attending a private boarding school for high school. I got as an 8th grader, I got a scholarship from the gifted and talented program to attend a private boarding school, high school, for 4 years. But by the time I got to my senior year, I was kind of tired of like going away to school and living on campuses, and now boys are cute. I'm like 17 now. I'm looking at boys different. So I'm like, I don't want to go away to school. I'm gonna stay home, my home, Newark, New Jersey, and go to NJIT. So I went to NJIT for a couple of years, but by now the hip hop is really starting to blossom. Like now you're hearing it on the radio. Now there are actual events that I could attend in New York, and I didn't want to miss out on that. Like the music still dominated my brain. It was just calling me, and I would find myself, I'd skip one class, I'd skip another class. Next thing you know, I'm not going to classes at all because I want to go to this artist showcase. I want to go to this workshop. I want to learn more about this new emerging thing called hip hop. And I was always writing. That was another thing too. I had already started writing rhymes. I want to say 9 years old. And the way I used to write rhymes, I approached it like math. To me, I used to, like, I didn't write rhymes like line for line. I would just put a bunch of words on a piece of paper and kind of put it together like a calculus equation, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, okay, A, E, like, where are all the A's landing on the paper? Where are the, I'm looking at vowel, consonant placement. Like, I was really writing rhymes a whole different way. My approach was pure unconventional, completely mathematical even. And the music, it was just it just took over my soul. And at some point I just found myself, drifting away in class and just really kept hearing the music. And that's what made me just say, you know what, I gotta follow my heart. So I told my parents, sorry, I'm not gonna pursue this, I'm not gonna pursue engineering. I wanna pursue a career in rap. And they said, awesome, you're on your own. We're not going to kick you out of the house. We're not going to be those guys, but don't expect us to be paying for any studio time anytime soon because we're going to be busy paying the rest of the tuition in full that we still got to cover, whether your ass is in class or not. So, and they were true to their word. They let me kind of thug it out. I had to hop turnstiles and things to, get to these places in the city, but that's what ultimately led me to, creating a demo and getting to the point of actually getting in front of a Q-tip. So I definitely, it all lent itself to the creation of Rah Digga the rapper, Rah Digga the teacher even. And I maybe that might be one regret I have. Not a regret. It's not a regret, but I will say, if I were able to to control the multiverse, I would just love to see what Rah Digga would look like that graduated from MIT and continued her engineering career. That is something that I think about from time to time. Like, what does my life look like as that person?
Beautiful. And I hope y'all can, again, I know some of you are graduating, some of you are at the beginning of your college journeys, but, those are the kinds of questions that you are encountered with, as you go through it. And so it's great to hear from people who have made those kinds of hard decisions in the past too. So we have time for questions. I'm going to pass around the little mic. Who wants to start us off? Would you mind passing it to Lisa? And then we'll just kind of work back to Jordan. And then I'll do this so we can see the questioner. All right.
Hello, Rah Digga. Sorry, I'm a little far. My name is Jaleesa Cersei. I have a question. Growing up, my family was big on horror movies, and you were in one of my mom's favorite. What made you accept the role as the nanny in 13 Ghosts?
So, interestingly enough, when I got that role, it was not the role that I went out for. So, I took a trip to California to audition for Baby Boy. And I just knew I had and it was the role that I had studied and prepared for. But I just knew I had it in the bag. I was like, oh, how hard can it be? Home hood girl from Compton. And it wasn't Taraji's role I was auditioning for. It was like the best friend or something. So I just knew I had that one in the bag. I'm like, oh, I'm a girl from the hood. How hard can this role be? So on my way back home to the airport, I get a call from my agent. He's like, hey, you think you got time to squeeze in one more audition? Now, I knew the night before that my work in California was done. I went out and partied. I was hammered. On my way to the airport, I'm still hungover, but now I go into this. I'm like, okay, fine. I make time for this one last audition. I go in this audition completely hungover. It was so bad that I actually started improvising. Like I was trying to read I was trying to read the script with the casting director, and the words were literally moving off the page. And at some point, I just put the papers down, like, I can't read this. Can we just, can I just wing it? And we did that. She fed me lines. I just gave her the first thing that came to mind. I gave her my natural self. And I would say within 24 hours, I got a phone call like, yo, they loved your audition. You got it. I got the call. Let me see. This audition took place on a Friday. I had a show that weekend. I think my lawyer called me on Saturday, like, get ready. And I was in a hotel of a whole nother state, in the middle of a tour or getting ready to start a tour. And they're like, my lawyer gave me the heads up. Like, I think just be prepared. Just get your affairs in order. I think you got it. And then that Monday morning, I got the official call. And by that night, I was on a plane to Vancouver for 6 months. I didn't have any time to prepare life. And I had so many things on the slate as Rah Digga already that I know that whole day Monday, both my managers were just on the phone telling everybody Rah Digga has to pull out. She's not available anymore. She's got a movie role. And there it was. And they actually had me slated to die. So I was supposed to be.
Yeah, you didn't, and I was happy about that. I'm not gonna lie.
I was supposed to be the person that got smashed in between the wall. And a week into shooting, I'm not thinking of storyline and character arc. I'm thinking, wait a minute, as soon as I die, I don't get any more paychecks. So about a week into shooting, I just stepped to the producer and the director, and I just literally asked him, yo, can I live? And he was like, let me think about that. And it took about a week, and he came back to me. He said, Joel Silver and I were talking, and I think, I guess they kind of did some polling with some phantom audiences, and they're like, your character is quite the fan favorite. I think, because they explored the possibility of me dying, and it was not sitting well with their test audiences. They said, no, we've decided to let you live. And here's a lesson, and be careful what you wish for. I ended up being the last person shooting. The entire rest of the cast was wrapped up and on their way home, and I was still stuck in in Vancouver by myself after they blew up the house, doing the scene at the end. So I was like, wait a minute, how I get to be last on set? Well, you asked, could you live? Here you go.
Your character was special when I was a kid because, of course, we all know it's no sugarcoating. Black person always died, and you come out with the playing with the DJ rapping. What was that? I think it was the chanting that they were doing in a movie. But
Mhm.
also, it did speak a lot as they had a black woman take care of white kids. You know, white. You were like a nanny to a white family. How did
Mhm.
you feel about that at that point in time, or did you ever even stop and think about it? You know.
To be honest, I didn't really think much about it. Like to me, the whole concept of them having a nanny was kind of like ironic in itself because for one, the family's piss poor. How y'all even afford
Right?
it? So it was like it was like, to me that was funny. I just looked at my role more of like being a babysitter. Now, originally, the role was designated for, they were looking for an older Hispanic woman that would eventually die with, who barely spoke English, that would eventually die. The fact that, I was proud of the fact that I was able to convince them to give this role to this black rapper girl that y'all originally had designated for, Consuela. And I wasn't really looking at it like, there's some negative connotations to this. I just kind of thought that people would laugh at the prospect of them having a nanny, being that they were supposed to be like impoverished at this point.
Gotcha. Well, I thank you for answering my questions. I'm going to pass you to
Back to Jordan.
Jordan.
And I see we got one hand up too online, and I'll get to you right after Jordan's question.
Hi. I know you mentioned at one point rappers like Future, but if you were to give advice for people that wanted to have the same preference in talking about those things in music, what would you say to them before they put their music out there?
Well, here's the thing, right? I feel like, art is art, and what you take from it is always going to be subjective. How you feel about it is always going to be subjective. And I never knock artists for their messaging and what it is that they represent. I just want them to, be cognizant of the effect and the impact that you're having on your listeners. And while I don't believe in making public people, you're like, this is supposed to be a role model. Like you're not supposed to do that. Like I don't believe in imprisoning artists into this like role model role. You should just naturally want to be responsible enough at some point, whatever that looks like, whether it's teaching, whether it's making an appearance at a school. Hey, maybe you might want to donate some proceeds to a foundation that that offsets the messaging in your, like, whatever it is. I think, you, the human being, should take some sort of personal responsibility for how you use or misuse your platform. Now, that's not to say that you have to do that. That's not to say that everybody wants to do that. Does that mean I'm going to stop listening to your music if you don't go on and become a camp counselor? Of course not. But you, as an artist, as a black artist, if you see that, hmm, something that I'm doing is creating this domino effect, in your heart of hearts, you, somewhere in your life, hopefully you'll think of a way to course correct it. Like it can't just it can't just be about get the bag, get the bag, get the bag. Like everything can't just be get the bag.
Are you working on any goals right now, music wise or literature wise, with a book maybe?
I am. I feel like there are parts of my story that I haven't lived yet, which is why I haven't really pursued writing a book. But I'm definitely journaling. That is some I love writing. I'm constantly writing because whatever, whatever feelings and things that I may have been experiencing at a particular point in life, I never want to forget that. So I'm always writing stuff down. I think I really want to I really want to take this lyrics matter foundation and grow it, because I think all of it is programming. The same way you may hear over and over and over again, I'm a boss bitch, I'm a boss bitch, the bag, the bag, the bag, spin the block, the ops, the ops, the ops. I feel like if these things can get programmed, in young people's minds, so can lyrics matter. Lyrics matter. Lyrics matter. Like, this is my flex. This is something that I want to drill in people's minds so that maybe when they're writing, something might click in their head, like, you know what? Let me not say this. Let me not do that. Another thing I've been doing, I've been actually refraining from cursing in some of my records. Not all of them. I mean, I've even, and as of lately, for some years now, I've been refraining from using the N word in my rhymes. And what I'm learning is it's making me think more. Like, it's real easy to space fill my verses with curses and the N word. But now, what if I don't do that and put a punchline there instead, or a vocabulary word in there instead? And it has to sound just as tough as it would as if I did have all this inflammatory language. And like, that's the real, that's the real key. That's the real challenge. So when it's all said and done, if you don't want to be a person that feels like, oh, I'm preaching in my rhymes or something, like, I still, I'm still me, I'm still about this life. I think at some point in your real life, I think you owe it to society to make a difference in that way. I mean, take Cardi B for example. She rap about what she rap about, but hey, guess what? She gonna go on live with Joe Biden. She's gonna talk about politics. Megan gonna show up for Kamala. Even Nikki, she's gonna promote girls go to school. Like, it's like whatever they're dealing with in their artistry, there's also something in their real life that's going to counter what's going on in the music to show you, hey, in real life, when you pull back the curtain, this is what needs to be happening in real life. These are the things that are important.
I have one last question, maybe two, but
Just one.
Sure.
all right. Okay. How long does it take you to finish a song? Do you come back to it? Because I know it's probably hard to decide if you want to go through with it or not when you work with people.
So what I do, whenever I'm working on a whole song, I will do one verse and one hook, then I'll stop, I'll bounce it out, I'll get in the car and listen to it and see how it feels in the car. And that's going to let me know, do I continue in this direction? Should I scrap this whole thing? Uh, to me, it has to feel good in the car. That's like my test. Like, when I listen to myself back in the car, like, okay, am I being too wordy? Do I need to bounce more here? Uh, you know, these rhymes sound a little too basic for me. Let me tighten this part up. And I have what I call a rap technique that I use. It's like my template for 16 bar verses. And I'll listen to it and, like, okay, does it feel good up to this point? Do I need to bump it up a notch lyrically? Am I locking step with everybody else on the record? Uh, is my verse the best on the record? Because that's all I be. That's all I be caring about when I do collabs with people. Like, okay, first of all, make sure, yeah, I'm not, I'm following the trajectory of the arc of the record, but also my verse is the best one on the record. These are the things I'm listening for when I collab with people. Hold on 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. I actually spilled some coffee over here. Let me grab some paper towel for it.
Yeah, no worries.
1 second.
It looks like
hear you. If you guys, you can continue talking because I can hear you.
okay. Delana, I think. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Whoever has their hand up, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question while Rah's about to come back. But you go ahead.
Yeah, you can ask your question. I can totally hear you.
You can hear me okay?
Yep, just fine.
Brilliant. Well, hello, my name is Delana. You got that right. Big
Hi,
hello,
Delana.
massive respect from Glasgow, Scotland. Before I get into it, Rah Digga, I want to say thank you for everything you've done for other women working in hip hop. I see you, and I say thank you. So my question is, right? So I'm a radio broadcaster. I also am the outreach worker for a community radio station here in Glasgow. We're not a hip hop org, but it's definitely driven by two old, like long-standing hip hop heads here in Glasgow. And what we do is we use hip hop as a community engagement tool to work specifically with young people, right? And we do okay when it comes to engaging young men, but it's hard to engage the young women.
Really?
It is. We don't see the same kind of numbers and engagement, or even the level of engagement. Like maybe they try a thing once and then they don't take it forward. So as one woman working in hip hop to another, like what sort of advice might you be able to give me actually to be able to continue trying new things to try and get more women, young women in particular, because I am committed to passing on the culture that, that they want to maybe try picking up a mic or having a go on the decks, grabbing a spray paint can or trying a windmill. What might you give me as a bit of an advice for that?
That's interesting. It's interesting to hear you say that. I'm listening. It's interesting to hear you say that because I find in my travels, most of the women, especially like in the European countries, that's where I find all of the beat girls. Like I'll find a girl with a spray paint can and breakdancing in Europe quicker than I'll find one here. So it's interesting to hear you say that. I do feel like because the women in hip hop, especially now, is it still safe to assume that the rest of the world pretty much mimics American hip hop? Like, is that still like, is that offensive to say, or is that like still a real thing?
I think that there is still it's still being used as a reference point.
Okay. But everyone has pretty much developed their own culture in their own respective regions. But hip hop is like the initial reference point. I mean, U.S. Now, I feel like especially when I'm touring, it's like the other places outside of U.S. have like stuck to the roots of it, the core elements of it, where here it's more of a flashy, flossy thing. And I don't know if women see that and get discouraged or feel like, well, if I got to do that, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in looking like her and sounding like her. So that's the reason why I asked the question. Like, do you think women are seeing what the women in hip hop look like now in the US, or see what's being considered successful? Because you can see, if you look long enough, you'll see all sorts of variety of women in hip hop. But if you know, at first glance, if you're just looking at what's getting forced down everybody's throat, there's this thing that, you know, most people will probably feel like, well, I'm not doing that. So I wonder if that is something that is deterring people. And if it is, I would say maybe programs like what I do and other artists, because there are a lot of us that are, you know, doubling as hip hop educators. Maybe, you know, maybe it would behoove you to reach out to other artists like myself and say, hey, is it possible to set up a residency, or, you know, maybe we could do like a boot camp. I'm just thinking of things that might help engage the women in your community. Like maybe we can get a boot camp together or a workshop together, and you know, a female artist that's popular, or, you know, at least someone that they heard of, might draw some folks in, do something on a weekly basis, you know, a daily basis if you could, a monthly basis, and draw those, you know, draw those ladies in that way. That could be something, because I just even with my Lyrics Matter workshops, now be clear, these kids don't have a clue who I am in real life. And I just recently appeared on Redman's album. They all came to class the next day like, oh my God, I can't believe you rap like that. Like they've heard of me, but it's their parents that are that, you know, that grew up to me or with me. It's not them. It's like all of them in a row coming to me like, can I, mom, you my mother's favorite rapper. You my father's favorite rapper. Can I take a picture with you? I gotta take this picture for my mother. I gotta take this picture for my mom. Like these are, you know, these are how the kids are talking to me. And it's their parents that are nudging them into the program. So things like that do work. So now I'm sitting here with a class full of students who may or may not have been interested in music at all, but their parents caught wind that Rah Digga, their favorite old school rapper, is doing a music workshop, and now they, you know, they're personally bringing their kids, you know, giving their kids a ride to class just for opportunity to take a picture with me. But guess what? I got 20 kids in my class now, and I'm gonna show them the ways of the Jedi, and that's how it starts.
No, thank you for that. We do things like an annual jam, you know, and we put on loads and loads. That's part of my outreach work, is to try and recruit people for these workshops, all free, all run by really like established and really experienced tutors here, like the heads from Scotland, you know. But we
Do it
still,
more than once a year, though.
yeah, we're trying, we're putting in the work. We're just,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
seeing the results, you know, that we're hoping for, basically.
But like I
when we
said, you know, it doesn't always have to be a concert or a festival. Sometimes it can be something as simple as what we're doing right now. Everybody just clicked onto a Zoom link, and now I'm able to share my experience with, you know, a dozen or more kids in class. Like it's these little, you know, it's all of it. It's a culmination of everyone in the village coming up with ways to, you know, spread the message, and something as, you know, something as simple as what we're doing right now can even make a difference.
Yeah. And I hate to cut us off, but we got students who need to go to their next class as well, because we're in the middle of the day here. So can we please give Rah Digga a round of applause? Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I be long-winded. Well, Bernsey, you know I can talk. So
oh, listen, and we're just soaking it up. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Rah. I'll be in touch. We'll talk, you know, in a few minutes. But yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate you more. Thank you, everybody. Good luck in all y'all endeavors.
Say bye.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye.